Shelley Hughes, Senate District F, and I'm all by myself today. Buddy is actually behind the camera, and he'll be watching your comments as we get started on February 17th, live from the state capital of Juneau, Alaska, in room 30 on the ground floor, just inside the front entrance to the left. We are wanting to make sure that you like the video and please share it. Bring other people in to the conversation. I was happy at the coffee chats this last weekend to have new faces, new people coming. You know, I've been the one that has been saying, I hope at this time when the savings are running out and there are legislators looking to close a $1.5 billion gap, primarily on the backs of our small population at this point, that it is definitely the time for the silent majority to arise, for the sleeping giant to awaken. And I can try from here to get that going, but really it's going to take people like you watching this video to engage the people that you know, and you can do that by sharing this video right now. Maybe putting a note at the top, hey, listen in, this important stuff that's going to impact all of us. You can go to work, you can talk about it at the water cooler. If you're taking classes, you can talk with your fellow students around the dinner table, when you get together with friends, your extracurricular activities. Let people know, because the stuff coming down the pike is going to affect every single household in this state. And you take $1.5 billion, a shortfall, and you have a population, what are we about, buddy, about 730,000, something like that. And we have 1/3 of the population right now on Medicaid. I'm not sure how many children we have under age 18, but I know we have about 10,000 per grade level. So between kindergarten and 12th grade, that'd be 10,000 times 13, so 130,000 children in school. And then you've got, you know, your 1-year-olds, your 2-year-olds, your 3-year-olds, your 4-year-olds. So there you are, you're up to 170,000. Yeah, 170,000 children. So when you're talking about putting taxes on the working Alaska, you know, it's serious stuff, and people need to get engaged. So with that, if you haven't shared the video, please do. Again, it's February 17th, and I'm Shelley Hughes, if you've just joined me. And Buddy is behind the camera. And we're going to get rocking and rolling here, and Buddy will read things as they come up. I want to, again, thank those that came to the coffee chats. We had new people come. There was great conversation regarding the Alaska Reads Act. There was conversation regarding crime and what's happening. There was conversation about the budget. There was conversation about how to close the gap. So lots of, there were folks in Chugach. Some folks believe that Medicaid expansion is a good thing. I am concerned, as I expressed in a post, that I had predicted, and I'm afraid what I thought could happen, I learned has happened, and that is, as the state's picking up part of the bill for working age able-bodied adults, that since that expansion occurred under former Governor Walker, some of our truly vulnerable population, those are intellectually and developmentally disabled Alaskans who cannot provide for themselves through working, they have suffered a cutback of services. We'd already heard that seniors have seen themselves getting pushed to the back of the line because Medicaid pays better than Medicare. Medicare is the federal program that seniors pay into, but it pays a lower rate for visits for health care than Medicaid does. Medicaid is the one for low-income folks, and the state picks up half the tab, and the federal picks up the other half. I will say for expanded Medicaid, it's a 90-10 split, 90% state, no, 90% federal, 10% state. But even that, when you're talking millions of dollars, makes a difference. So Buddy, do we have people that have joined us? And by the way, share the video before Buddy we start greeting those who've joined us this evening.
So Ted Anderson is watching.
Hi Ted. Thank
Johnny
you for joining
Murdoch
us.
is watching.
Hey Johnny, happy anniversary. I saw you had an anniversary not too long ago.
Susan Johnson is watching, and she says, hi, glad to see
Susan.
you. How have you been?
I've been good. is laughing because he knows what it's like and the kind of the craziness, the busyness, and
it's almost sounded like you were trying to convince yourself of your own answer.
Yeah, I've been good. Well, I'll just tell folks, we'll stop right here for a second because tomorrow we're having a lunch and learn in the Capitol. I don't know if it'll be on gavel or gavel. It may or may not, but it's going to be on the topic of cybersecurity and what the important precautions that state governments need to take. The state of Colorado had a cybersecurity attack, and we'll learn a little bit about the impacts of that. Very far-reaching. But I personally had a cybersecurity attack because Saturday, my bank account that I've had for 33 years, my husband and I had for 33 years through a good bank here in the state of Alaska, there was fraudulent online access and withdrawals. So it wasn't a matter of just, sometimes you'll get notified that your card has been compromised, your ATM card, you have to get a different number. Or you might get a call, hey, was there's a strange activity that happened on Tuesday, was this you? And then they can reverse it. This is actually where the whole account has been compromised. And so we had to actually close a 33-year-old account and open a new one. And we sat at the bank for almost 3 hours with a very patient and good bank employee to work out what we could, but there's still a lot of hassle and work for me left ahead of things that they couldn't take care of from their end. But so the cybersecurity for the state, can you imagine all the public data the state has? And not only for private individuals, but for companies, corporations that pay taxes. And so any kind of breach would be bad. So we'll be learning about that. If it happens to air, it'll be at noon tomorrow, Tuesday the 18th. So that is how, when you ask me how I've been doing, I've been kind of reeling with that. Also, I want to just put a shout out, well wishes. I don't think they're watching, but my stepfather has been at the hospital recovering from broken hip and surgery, and so just well wishes to Papa Gary. And then our intern, Dawson, is fighting a bug, and so he's resting up at home this evening. So well wishes to all of those out there that are trying to recover.
But Dawson is watching.
Hey Dawson, missed you today, but I'm glad you stayed home. We didn't want you to make us sick.
James Squires is watching and says hello.
Hi James.
William Deaton is watching.
Hey William, I believe I owe you a phone call or a text back. You texted me and asked me if I was busy. I was actually at the time, and I know I owe you a response. So I will try to do that, and you feel free to reach out again if you don't hear back from me.
Ted Anderson says Trump revived America's economy by lowering taxes. Does the damage to our fractured economy get discussed when talking taxes? Here in the building. When talking tax increases.
You know what I hear about taxes from some people?
Don't mess with Texas.
I hear people talking about that. It's actually a really good question. Now, let's do a little poll question. Because when I think of a government raising taxes, I think those taxes are being requested to pay for government services. That's typically what you think of. But you know what I hear in this building is to pay for PFDs. And so my question to you, if you're being taxed for something, are you thinking those taxes are for services or for PFDs? Because to me, the PFD is from the earnings of the permanent fund and has nothing to do with taxes. Yet I hear people talking about raising taxes for the purposes of PFDs, and that's not what I associate with taxes. So, question, taxes. Should taxes pay for PFDs? Well, if you had taxes. I know a lot of you don't want taxes, and I understand that. But what do you associate taxes with? Services or PFDs, I guess is the question. So I'm curious how you might respond.
Penny Mosher says, hi, Shelley. So sorry I missed you last weekend.
Oh, I missed you too, Penny. Like I said, I think we had 20 to 25 in Palmer, a great group. In Chugiak, we had kind of two small groups, initially 5 people early on, and then another 5 for the latter half. So good groups, always appreciate. When while we're saying that, we are having our next time, of course this is the month of February, So I'll be back in March for a town hall with the Mat-Su delegation. I believe just about everybody is coming. The 9 of us, there's 3 senators, 6 House members. March 21st, it will be at 10 a.m. Looks like last time we did it on the Wasilla side at the Wasilla Senior Center. So this time we're going to do it over on the east side, over at the Palmer Senior Center, but will be for the greater Mat-Su area. So March 21st, that's a Saturday, 10 a.m. to noon.
So Earl and Karen Lackey are watching.
Hey Earl, were they watching last week when we held? Lisa, can you get? Karen did a great cross stitch, and I'll just put it on camera since you all are watching, because I have it positioned in my office where I'm sitting at my desk and I look up, and it is a great reminder. Can you see it? Is it showing up? The mountains signify strength. The what do you call them? Fireweed, persistence, and the forget-me-not is a reminder that the people back home in District F are remembering me. And that means a lot to me, Karen. And by the way, we had Future Farmers of America, people interested in agriculture here last week. And so when I usually say friends and family for District F, and sometimes I'll say fine folks for District F, but I'll have to add farmers to that too.
We're getting a little behind and catch up here real
Okay.
quick with some quick comments. Let me find where I left off. Senator Reinbold is watching. Chris Hayes is watching. He says, "Hi Shelley, thanks to you and Mike for standing up for Alaskans and not special interest."
Thank you, Chris, and hi, good evenings to the Senator. Thank you for joining us.
D. Coranda says, "Shared."
Awesome, thank you very much, D.
James Squires says, he's telling me to give you a cup of coffee.
Do I look tired?
No, I don't think you look tired. Butch Goodnose says, watching from Delta.
Hey, it's always good to have folks from around the state. I appreciate that.
Kevin McCabe is watching. He says, "Hi, Shelley and Buddy."
Hey, Kevin.
Larry.
Good to see you briefly this weekend, Kevin and Lynn.
Larry Fancher is watching.
Hi, Larry.
Jim Hart is watching.
Oh, Jim. Yep. And Lisa's watching too, except she's watching in person. I know she really misses you. I had the opportunity today to have this evening for a really brief connection with the mayor of Palmer, Mayor Edna DeVries, and her husband Noel. And I understand that the mayor is aware that Lisa is missing home. We all miss home. It is tough being down here, and so.
Carolyn Clift is watching.
Hi, Carolyn.
Let's see here. Cindy Huffman Todd is watching.
Hi, Cindy.
So we have some comments here we'll go through real quick.
Okay.
First, there's one from Will Deaton regarding abortion. Would you be willing to sponsor the Senate version of House Bill 178, the Life at Conception Act? Keep up the good work with SJR 13.
Before that bill can stand and not be knocked down by the courts, we need SJR 13 to pass, and SJR 13 is our abortion amendment, or what's the short title? A constitutional amendment related to abortion, I believe it is.
That's correct.
And we did have some co-signers added to the bill. On Friday, we had folks stand up on the floor and ask for their name to be added to that. That would allow us to save some babies in our state, and excited to have additional co-sponsors. And we did get word from the Health and Social Services Chair, Senator David Wilson, that he's going to be trying to squeeze it into the schedule soon. Do we have an update on that, Lisa, as far as whether possibly next week? So we'll see. We will keep you informed, because what you think about that is going to be important. And while we're talking about bills coming up, we might as well show what we've got coming up. A very important thing when we go back to why the silent majority needs to arise, why the sleeping giant needs to awaken, it's because of this. And Buddy, let me know if I need to change the position, or you want to hold up the one you have.
Yeah, I'll hold up the one I have here.
So, opportunity in health finance for you to weigh in, public testimony, starting this week on Wednesday.
And Lisa is going to post this on the comments section.
So Wednesday is 5 to 8 off-net. Thursday, Matsu LIO. Please show up at the LIO in the evening, 6:45 p.m. to 8 p.m. But before that, at 5 o'clock, those calling in off-net will be sharing that time from 5 to 8. Friday, time to show up for the Anchorage LIO after work at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock to 6:45, again off-net 5 to 8 Friday, and then Saturday more off-net time 12 to 3 at off-net and the LIOs. The total looks like about 12 hours for off-net, about an hour and 15 minutes at the Matsu LIO, and an hour and 45 minutes at the Anchorage. I'm not sure how well balanced that is. I do know that there will probably be some calling from the off-net from the South Central area who may be part of that off-net, but if you add Anchorage and Matsu, they're probably close to half the population.
And there's an additional 3 hours on Saturday at the LIOs as well.
Yeah, all the LIOs.
So
that's
pretty
this.
close
This is
to
House
even.
Finance, the first batch of public testimony open for you. Some in this building believe that we have found the baseline for spending, that we can't cut a penny more. So you can weigh in what you think about that, especially when there's $1.5 billion gap and folks are looking for you to fill it. So you might want to weigh in, because one of the ways to close that gap is to tighten the belt. Also, as far as those times, if you're going to call in, nobody's got it. We've got phone numbers. This also, Lisa will post this in the comments section. Anchorage is 907-563-9085. Juneau, 586-9885. And everywhere else, 844-586-9085. So we'll also post those phone numbers for you. While we're talking about other bills up, one more sheet Buddy will hold up. We do have, and this isn't on the sheet, but I have this companion bill of a House bill, which is Representative Jonathan Christ Tompkins, and the Senate version is 113, Senate Bill 113. It's the Teacher National Board Certification, and it is up at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. So I'll be presenting that along with Dawson, if Dawson is feeling well enough, and we'll be presenting that before the Senate Education Committee. And then on Friday we have, I'm going to jump down to Friday just because that's our bill, SB 171 Industrial Hemp. As if you recall, we had a bill to make industrial hemp an agricultural crop rather than having it under the marijuana and criminal legislation. But there's some tweaking to bring it up to what was passed at the federal level in the 2018 Farm Bill in Congress. So that's just sort of a cleanup bill just so the program can go forward and continue. The good news is it was going to have to be a pilot program, but now it will be able to be an ongoing program rather than just the pilot program, but we need to get that passed. Also, bills of interest, state lottery. The governor has a bill on this topic, but so does Representative Steve Thompson of Fairbanks, and that's SB 239. We're not seeing public testimony listed at those times, but if you want to hear an overview of the bill, House State Affairs will be hearing that tomorrow at 3:30. And Title IV rewrite is by Senator Machicki, and it has to do with the alcohol laws, and there's some needed fixes in there. There are also some concerns. That bill has been attempts at that rewrite. How many years, Buddy, do you know?
At least 4.
Yeah, it's been ongoing, so that's up in Senate Finance. If it's getting a hearing in Finance, it likely means it has the potential to move to the floor. So that is of interest, and that is Wednesday at 9 a.m.
Okay, Senator, you have a whole lot of comments here.
Okay, let's go for comments.
A lot of them, so you're going to have to just bear with me here. And I'm going to ask maybe that you clarify your question regarding PFD and taxes, where you some people are wondering if that
I'm not proposing that we pay taxes. Go ahead.
The people are wondering if you're proposing that we pay taxes to pay for a PFD, or if we pay taxes in order to make up for not being able to pay PFD. What are you saying exactly?
Okay. The question is, what
clear.
I'm hearing people talk about needing taxes in order to pay for a PFD. I disagree with that. So my question is, because the PFD is to be earnings from the permanent fund. That's how it was set up, in lieu of subsurface rights, in lieu of the fact that only 1% of the state of Alaska is available for land purchases, part of the statehood compact and agreement. So my question is, if you are being taxed, let's just say at some point you're paying a tax, in your head, do you see that as paying for PFD, or do you see taxes as paying for services? I'm not saying we're going to have a tax, or I'm not jumping up and down and saying let's pass taxes. I just associate taxes with paying for services. I do not associate taxes with paying for a PFD, and people are pushing taxes in order to pay for a PFD, and I disagree with that. So that was my question. Do you associate taxes with services or taxes with PFDs? I associate permanent fund earnings with the PFD. That's just where I am. So sorry if I was confusing. I'm just baffled when I hear people in this building talking about, well, if you're going to pay a larger PFD, then you have to raise taxes to do it. To me, that, if you're raising taxes, you're raising taxes because you aren't willing to reduce government spending on the budget.
Well, I think may I play devil's advocate, please? I think their argument would be that we have a budget shortfall. Mm-hmm. We have X amount in revenue, mm-hmm. and the only other place to get the money to make up for the shortfall is from the earnings reserve, and the only way to make a draw from the earnings reserve that doesn't endanger the entire account is to cut PFDs. That's what their position is, and the only way mm-hmm. to make the shortfall while also securing the permanent fund dividend and the permanent fund itself is to institute some sort of new revenue. So in the end, you can go round and round, semantically about mm-hmm. what you call it, but in the end, you're paying taxes in order so that people who want their full PFD can have it, and those who want their full government services can have it.
It may be about semantics, but it is a perspective.
I'm not saying it's not to me.
I know.
I'm just saying.
I get what you're saying, and that's probably how they'd explain it. But if you review the committees, the floor sessions, when the permanent fund dividend was being developed, it was very clear that the PFDs were to be paid first and definitely were not to be used to pay for government services. It was the remaining portion that was to be paid for government services. So when people are talking about raising taxes to pay PFD, I don't think semantically that should even be part of the conversation. To me, if you're raising taxes, it's because you're wanting to keep a certain level of state spending for the budget. Well, I want to throw this up too, just because we did all those bills.
Okay.
And this is another way to. Am I holding it in the right place?
I got it.
This is a way. Any of the bills, whether they were the ones we were just giving you or something else you're interested in, that is the magic number.
What's with all the hearts?
Oh, it's from Valentine's Day.
Oh.
My last name.
It was like, so you text you text that number, and then you text the bill number. It would be HB, whatever the number, SB if it's a Senate bill, and you'll get enrolled. And it's easy enough. They give you instructions if you want to disenroll, but actually it's not like you're going to get a bunch of junk. It's only going to be about the bill you signed up to learn what was happening, and you can disenroll at any time. And the activity on a bill, toward the end of the session, it could be you might get one or so a day, but typically it's weeks between actions. So it's really a good way to keep track. Wanted to talk about the
Senator. Before you go on there, we have a lot of comments and a lot of questions. What do you want to concentrate on?
I want to hear their questions, and there's two things I want to talk about. If they don't come up, but after, if there's time. One is the binding rule constitutional amendment and bill, and secondly is the spending cap being proposed.
Okay.
But
well, let's get these first. Okay. So Kevin McCabe says no taxes for PFD. That is the ultimate transfer for wealth. Hammond would roll over in his grave, as this would be the ultimate socialist move. James Squire says a basic tenet in this issue, as articulated by Donna Arduin, is spending is taxing, and in this regard, Alaska is already a high-tax state. There is only one fiscal solution that is sustainable over the long term. Cindy Huffman-Todd is watching.
Hi, Cindy.
Ted Anderson says, wow, so tax workers to pay PFDs. I believe that is socialism. Thank you for enlightening.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ted.
Nancy Driscoll Stroop says, yes, I definitely associate taxes with paying out PFDs. I would rather give up my PFD than pay an income tax. We have the permanent fund, and if we need it to pay for services, then so be it. But I'll be danged if I'm going to pay more taxes just to support people who are not paying taxes and do want their full PFD.
Just to let you know, Nancy, I fundamentally disagree with an income tax on so many levels, and we could talk about that, but it would cause out-migration of productive workers and leave the burden on fewer people. It penalizes productivity when 1 out of 3 people is already on Medicaid. I do not want to be penalizing productivity. It's just fundamentally, philosophically goes against my grain. I understand what you're saying about PFDs, but then you have on the side of the equation is the spending. Our spending per capita is still very much out of the range of normalcy, even taking into account the large geographical area and the extra challenges we have with so many locations off the road system. We're still really out of proportion, which is why we are working on what is the Alaska Sunset Commission, and we'll talk about that later, but it is actually a way to find our true baseline in spending.
Kevin McCabe says, Buddy needs to clean his fingerprints off the lens. So, Kevin, I'll just have you know that it is clear as crystal on the phone as I'm looking at it. I see that it's showing up kind of fuzzy as you're watching it, and that has to do with just the cellular, and that's why we probably need to be next time and not out here. Because you only get a certain, I think you're down to 1 bar here.
How many bars do you have on that other phone?
Well, I have to interrupt in order to see it, but it's pretty
we
low.
only have 2 bars. Sorry, Kevin. So he's not actually holding it. We've got it in a little tripod. So sorry about that.
No, I think he thinks I have like fingerprints on this.
Yeah, that's what I think. But I kind of like the idea that it's fuzzy, because then it kind of, those lenses that make you look young and you don't see the wrinkles. So if it's fuzzy, I'm good with fuzzy.
Valerie K. Scott says, so many people leave this town. She didn't get to finish her sentence. I'm not sure she was saying. Valerie, if you could finish your sentence, let us know what's on your mind. Sam Tuck is watching.
Hi, Sam.
Johnny Murdoch says, Alaska is still getting sufficient oil revenue to fund the PFD, while legislators can spend taxes, sales income, new fees, fund government. Harold Borbridge is watching.
Hi, Harold.
Larry Fancher says, thanks for doing this update.
You're welcome, Larry.
Cindy Huffman-Todd says hello from Kenai. She's waving.
Hey, Cindy.
Greg Jacques is watching. John Gordioff says, thank you, Senator Hughes.
So all these people, whether you joined us at the beginning, we were promoting and encouraging you to share this video. So if you haven't shared it yet, please do. We really appreciate those that do. And as I said, this is a vital time for Alaskans in our area as well as around the state to understand what's going on and the impact of what's going to happen ahead, because there won't be a single person in the state of Alaska who will not feel the impact. And as I've said in the prior, at least last time, if not before, I believe we need a multi-pronged approach to closing the $1.5 billion fiscal gap and putting it solely on the backs of Alaskans through taxes and reductions to their PFD is not a viable solution. For one thing, it's not enough to close it. We need to have an honest conversation, and I believe one of the things we need to look at, and I know some people will disagree, but we need to look at revisit the petroleum property tax. There are certain boroughs that are receiving hundreds of millions of dollars over the years, and they do need to receive something, because the pipeline is crossing their borough, but I believe some of that money a decent amount of it could be helping us close the gap. That's just one example. Continuing to carefully rein in spending in a way where we can save more money and be efficient. I think that is another important aspect. And as we've talked about before, I do not support an income tax. At some point, a sales tax, a non-regressive sales tax with exclusions, seasonal, so that we can, our non-residents can pick up. It shouldn't all be on the back of residents. We have non-residents, more than 2 million, enjoying our state each year. So I think there are different things that we need to be doing, and it should not be fully on the backs of Alaska. And it does need to involve reining in spending further.
Okay. What do you want to do now?
Okay.
We've been on for half an hour.
Okay, I just want to mention the spending cap since we just talked about the budget. There is a bill, I believe it may be up this week, and I do not remember the bill number. Maybe you could look it up, Lisa.
What bill?
It's the spending cap bill, and if we can't find it here in the next couple minutes, we'll
The
post
bill
it
or
later.
the constitutional amendment?
No, the bill for the spending cap in Senate. It's a Senate finance bill, but just so you know, our general fund spending is in the neighborhood, I think it's 5.2, 5.3. This would put a spending cap, not in the Constitution, but in the statutes at about $6 billion. And it would be included under the cap would be the UGF spending. So if it's designated funding like fees and tuition, it would not be included. But it would include the unrestricted general fund, permanent fund dividends, retirement payments, and any cap money spent on the capital budget. The things that would be outside the cap in that bill being proposed are appropriations to the permanent fund principal, any debt obligations, any money spent for disasters, or deposits into savings account. So the proposed, it's SB 104, I found it, I'm sorry, SB 104, that might be one you want to text and follow. The amount is $6 billion, the suggested cap in the bill. And remember, I believe we're around 5.3 billion, so it's a little higher than we are. The growth rate of that would be we'll see when the bill comes out, but the discussion was 75% based on a 5-year trailing average of the CPI and 25% on the population change. So that is in statute. Legislature could blow past it. There would be nothing to stop that because there actually is a limit that was put in the Constitution years ago that's very high, and so a court would always rule on the side of the Constitution. So the statutory cap is not a solid. It's not a solid cap. There probably aren't the votes to get it in the Constitution. Doing something in the statute, is that better than nothing? I suppose it is, but we mustn't fool ourselves to think that that's the answer. I'm also thinking we're starting a little bit high when we're actually doing it higher where we are right now, especially after I feel like, as you know, we could still find efficiencies. SB 104, so be tracking that. There is one other topic I want to talk about quickly, but if you want to stop for comments, we can. Okay, I'm getting keep going. I want to talk to you because last week, you may have heard that I co-sponsored the constitutional amendment and a bill. The bill was SB 187. The constitutional amendment was SGR 17, and they are related to the binding rule, the binding caucus. And we're not going to revisit everything that happened with that, but fundamentally I believe that it is wrong to promise to vote for something sight unseen as much as 2 years in advance. I believe that a representative republic, constitutional representative republic like we have to keep our ear to the ground. We have to be listening to the people back home, and we have to be watching what happens with a bill, and promising in advance is not a practice that I think is a good idea. I actually have used the word un-American. There are a number of states that have abandoned it. Colorado actually has in their constitution, does not allow it, and there are other states as well. And there was mention that if we were to do something like that, because we've had binding caucuses in our state, that the legislature would go for the entire year. We wouldn't be able to get anything done. I believe with good leadership and engagement of the people in the majority and the minority, decision can be made. Other states do it. And as an example, I actually have a state line calendar, and let's see, we need to open it up. Well, maybe we don't, because Colorado, if you could hold this up so Colorado shows, please. So it's from left to right, January to December. So Colorado has a legislative session that meets from January to, I believe, May, is it, buddy?
Till mid-May.
Yeah, very similar to what we have. They do not allow the binding caucus, the binding rule. Arkansas is another state, and what's their session? How long does it last?
It goes till end of April.
And when does it start, Arkansas?
Mid-January.
Okay. And then Texas is another one. Now, Texas only meets every other year, so I'm not sure on the years they meet. They're not showing for this year, 2020, so this must be their off year.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how many months. I kind of doubted it's all year long, but we can find that out. But those are examples of states that don't allow it. It's harder work. It takes really good leadership and engagement from everyone to be able to come to an agreement, to have a budget that can be passed. One of the things that's driven it has been the requirement of a 3/4 vote to access our savings account, the constitutional budget reserve. As you know, to access the earning reserve, which is the earnings of the permanent fund, it only takes a simple majority. That bar for the 3/4, of course, that was to try to protect the savings, but also it makes it very hard to get the votes. And we don't want something that's going to cause horse trading. That's the opposite direction. But you'll have to realize that when we had a binding rule in the state, we had some of the highest budgets. We had some real spikes upward while we had the binding rule. So yes, horse trading could happen if you don't have one, but if you have good leadership, it wouldn't. And yeah, so anyway, it's basically you shouldn't promise your vote. When someone is a candidate, they cannot receive a donation or get promised support in exchange for promising to vote specifically for a bill. And the same thing goes, I think, once a candidate after the election shouldn't be promising anything similar either. So that's kind of the position on that. Those bills have referrals first to State Affairs. No word that they're going to get any hearing, but I did want to let you know that it's not exactly a novel thing that we're discussing this. Other states have gone through this and decided not to have the binding rules. So just wanted to get that out there because that all occurred last week. And yeah, anything else?
Yes. So a couple of comments on that note.
Sure.
Our friend Tim Robinson has chimed in with a couple of comments.
Hey, Tim.
First, he says, fire the cameraman, which he's probably serious because he doesn't like me very much because I tend to call him out when he's being pedantic, but that's okay. And he says, you weren't against the binding caucus until this year when you lost your chairmanships for not following the caucus. And I would like to invite you to respond to that.
Oh, I'd love to respond because I was opposed to it before and I bucked the system and left the majority before. Because joining it, I can't commit my vote in advance. So I never agreed with the rule. Yes, I was in a majority that had the rule, but I left it once. And if I have to, I'd leave it again because I have my constituents, my district, and what I think is best for the state is going to come before a rule that I believe is not appropriate. So
yeah, and I was here when that happened. She left the caucus on June 22nd, 2017. I remember it because it was my birthday.
And it was my daughter's birthday.
And I got a call that said you were leaving the caucus and you were the only committee you were left with was education. You were on education and you had one finance subcommittee, which was I think education. Or no. I can't remember I think it was judiciary actually. But yeah, and we were down to one staffer, and this is not Senator Hughes' first rodeo, and it won't be the last, Tim. So, thanks for letting her clarify that and
I just want to say I want to thank
history.
all the people, not just in District F for the fine folks, friends, family, and farmers, but people from across the state that expressed support, and across the political spectrum from the left to the right, Democrats, Republicans, undeclareds, nonpartisans who fundamentally disagree with the binding rule concept, and thank me for standing up for the people who sent me to Juneau. So I appreciate that. I believe that fundamentally the public is very concerned about that concept, and there's information and different things can occur along the way, and promising to vote for something 2 years. It's the reason I say 2 years is because the election is in November of the even year, and that's when the organizations are formed. And then 2 years later, you're doing 2 budget cycles. So that second year, it's 2 calendar years out. So yeah.
We have 5 minutes left. I'm gonna suggest that we have 5 minutes left. We've been on for 40 minutes. Have a couple of comments and then maybe wrap up. Okay. I'm gonna say, not that one. Melody McCullough says, "Good evening, Senator Shelley Hughes." Josh Johnson says, "Hello from the North Slope." And we've literally heard every single thing we could possibly hear. There's the new one. Josh Johnson says, "Hello from the North Slope. Please, no more oil tax credits on the oil companies." James Squire says, "Another famous Donna Arduin quote is, one of my colleagues did a longitudinal study that showed that the only thing worse a state can do to itself than have an income tax is to get one when it didn't have one before." Let's see. Dixie Steinfeld Banner.
Hi, Dixie.
Is not supporting some of the behavior and leadership and is thinking of you. Bill Booth is watching.
Hi, Bill.
Ron Gillum is watching.
Hey, Ron.
Howard Riley is watching.
Howard, good to have you.
That's about it.
Okay, and if this is going to show up later, we don't know because apparently we're frozen.
It might just be my phone.
Frozen.
I don't know. Let's just go as if it's
Yeah, we need to wrap. And we'll monitor your comments. Remember, if you're not watching this live and I'm not answering you, it's because you're watching a recorded version. But even if you're watching a recorded, you can share it. You can share it, and please like the video, and we'll be back with you. We should expect to be back here next Monday night at 6:30. Of course, that's always subject to change. And with that, thank you for joining. This is Shelley Hughes, and have a good evening or a good day if you're watching this. Good morning, whatever time you're watching this, if it's recorded from the Juneau